My mother tested every girl I dated with an $80,000 trap, and most of them failed. To everyone outside, my mother was generous and kind. She donated to charities, hosted events, and acted like she truly cared about people. But at home, she believed one thing: everyone lies when money is involved. She was convinced that every woman in my life only cared about what she could get from our family, and she made it her mission to prove it. I lost 3 relationships because of her test. The first girl panicked and denied everything when my mother confronted her. The second tried to secretly return the bracelet, hoping no one would notice. The third blamed the house staff and tried to act like she had done nothing wrong. My mother exposed every single one of them, and every time she would look at me with that same expression and say, "See, I was right." At some point, I stopped arguing. I stopped defending anyone. I just accepted that this was how things would always be, until I met Clara. Clara was different in a way that felt real. She worked as a nurse and often took long night shifts. She lived in a small apartment and drove an old car that barely started in the winter. But she never complained. She spent her weekends volunteering at a shelter and still managed to show up with a smile. And most importantly, she never once asked about my family's money. She didn't care about it. When I told my mother about Clara, she didn't react. She just gave me a quiet smile and said, "We'll see." I knew exactly what that meant. I begged her not to do it again. I told her Clara wasn't like the others, but my mother just looked at me and said, "Everyone is the same. You just haven't seen it yet." The night of the dinner felt heavy from the moment we walked in. The house was quiet, too quiet. Clara tried her best to keep things normal. She asked polite questions. She complimented the house. She smiled even when my mother didn't respond. My mother wasn't interested in conversation. She was watching, carefully. Halfway through dinner, my mother stood up and said she needed to check something upstairs. I didn't need to guess. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was placing the bracelet, setting the trap, the same trap that had destroyed every relationship before this one. 10 minutes later, Clara stood up and said she needed to use the restroom. My heart started racing. I knew the bracelet would be there, placed perfectly on the counter. Easy to see, impossible to ignore. I sat there, staring at the table, barely breathing, waiting. Every second felt longer than the last. Then Clara came back. She looked completely normal. No hesitation, no fear, no guilt. She sat down and continued talking like nothing had happened. My mother watched her closely, confused. Then suddenly, she stood up. "I think I lost something," she said. She walked upstairs and came back a minute later. Her face had changed. "My bracelet is missing." The room went silent. Then she turned slowly and looked directly at Clara. "Did you see it?" Clara paused, just for a second. Then she nodded. "Yes." My chest tightened. My mother smiled slightly, like she had already won. "And where is it now?" she asked. Clara answered calmly. "I gave it to your housekeeper." My mother froze. "What?" "I didn't feel comfortable holding something that expensive," Clara said, "so I called her and handed it over." My mother immediately called for the housekeeper. A few seconds later, she walked into the room holding the bracelet. "She gave it to me," she confirmed. The room went completely silent. For the first time in my life, my mother had nothing to say. No smile, no speech, no victory, just silence. Clara stood up slowly. She looked at my mother, then she looked at me. "I understand what you were trying to do," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "But I'm not here to prove myself." She took a step back. "I care about you," she said to me, "but I won't be tested like this." There was no anger in her voice, just certainty, and that made it hurt even more. Then she turned and walked away, just like that. No hesitation, no second look. I stood there frozen. Everything felt quiet, too quiet. Then I looked at my mother. She finally spoke. She passed. I shook my head slowly. "No, you failed." She looked at me, but for once she didn't argue. She didn't try to defend herself. And for the first time in my life, I saw something different in her eyes. Not anger, not pride, just silence, and maybe regret. Be honest, was Clara right to walk away, or did she overreact?